even after graduating my master's, I was looking for software engineering roles specifically. I wasn't looking for like data science roles or machine learning roles, because at that time it wasn't a very in-demand field as well. Back in 2017, 2018, there were a few roles out there, but they were mostly for like PhD graduates and just be able to talk about something beyond my work, right? A lot of times what happens is people I meet, they're all about, oh, I'm doing this in my work, I'm doing that in my work. Employers often want to see what you're doing besides of your work, right? Work is just a part of it, right? You have to do that. There's no excuse. But what do you do beyond that? How do you stay up to date? There's a broad range of things that I've seen in a way, but one of the most common ones is that the thought is that building a model is very simple and that I don't need to know anything about anything. I can just import Python libraries and build a model with like 15 lines of code and I'm done. Building models is 90% of the job is like, or 80% of the job is just cleaning the data. And secondly, any early career professional considers this. You do not want to build a complex model to solve a simple problem. And secondly, building models is not the only thing you do in data science or in machine learning. There are a ton of things that go in before and after you build a model. You need to have a clear goal in mind that if you want to be a machine learning engineer at a certain company, start researching that company, start researching the technologies they use, start researching what are the problems that the company is trying to solve, and start working towards that. Company here, they are heavily using cloud services, and a master's degree won't really have anything too much about cloud services. So getting like a certification in one of the technologies would be really great.
Hello everyone and big welcome back to Chaitanya Data. I am your host Chaitanya. Today we have a truly special guest with us. Someone whose journey in the world of technology and AI is not just inspiring but also full of lessons for all of us. Imagine a person who began his exciting journey right here in India at Fergusson College and then went to achieve big things globally. He's not just a professional, he's a leader in fast-paced world of machine learning, currently heading important projects at PMG in the United States. His career path shows us how dedication and smart choice can open up amazing opportunities. Our guest today is also a fantastic mentor. He has directly helped and trained over 150 data scientists, guiding them, sharing his knowledge and shaping their careers. Think about the impact of that. He understands the challenges and dreams of freshers and experienced professionals alike. His work at top places and known the difference between what's taught in colleges and what industry really needs. He can even tell you how to make your AI model fair and ethical, which is so important these days. Today, we are going to dive deep into his amazing story. We will explore his journey from Indian college to leading ML initiatives abroad. For those dreaming of studying or working abroad, he has practical advice on that too. So get ready for a conversation packed with insights, tips, and inspiration. Let's give warm welcome to Abhineet Kulkarni. Hello everyone and welcome to the Chaitanya Data Podcast. I am your host Chaitanya and today we have a truly amazing guest with us. Welcome Abhineet Kulkarni.
Hey, happy to be here and thanks for inviting me.
Yes, Abhineet, thank you so much for joining us on Chaitanya Data. I'm really pleasure to have you here. So Abhineet, your journey is fantastic and I know our listeners, especially those starting out, will be eager to hear about it. Let's begin at the start. Abhineet, will start with the journey and early career insights. Can you walk us through your journey from Fergusson College to leading ML initiatives at PMG?
So I did my schooling in Abhinav Vidyalaya in Pune. After that, I went to Fergusson College for 11th and 12th. Did my undergrad in computer engineering from Kaggle College. Again, during my undergrad, I sort of knew what I wanted to do. I always had a love for technology itself, and that kind of like led me to decide that I wanted to go into something related to technology. Chose computer engineering because I was fascinated with hardware as well over, something like IT or other majors. My main kind of like thing was there were a lot of people in my family who were in a software background. So my mom was working with a company called SAS at that time, and she actually encouraged me to kind of like look into data science and machine learning right from my undergrad. And that's why whenever I got a chance to pick any electives, I made sure that they were around something related to data, essentially, be it like database management systems or data mining or anything related to machine learning that I could try. Really liked that. Ended up deciding that I wanted to pursue further education, gave my GRE, and then came for my master's here in 2016, graduated in 2018, and then got a very great opportunity working at a role where I was not only working on machine learning initiatives, but also leading some upskilling programs for a bunch of different corporations that my company contracted with. Worked at that company for a little bit, and now been here at PNG for about 3 months.
That's a great overview of your path. It sounds like quite an evolution. Thinking back to those early days, did you always plan to work in machine learning, artificial intelligence, or did it happen over time?
Honestly, again, as I mentioned, like my journey was always around data science a little bit, but at that time, and like back in like 2014, 2015, path was not very clearly defined. There was not really, a big focus on data as a major in itself. There were a few programs out there that specialized in data science and machine learning, but not a lot. It was essentially just try to pick the courses that are relevant to what you think data science is about. And if you have somebody to guide you, that would be like that was essentially the main thing. Like for me, I benefited a lot because I had my mom, as I mentioned, was working actively in data science at that time, and she was able to guide me around about what courses do I need to like specialize in, what are the main things that I need to be sure about or be comfortable with, and that sort of like led my journey. But in a way, like even after graduating my master's, I was looking for software engineering roles specifically. I wasn't looking for like data science roles or machine learning roles, because at that time it wasn't a very in demand field as well. Back in 2017, 2018, there were a few roles out there, but they were mostly for like PhD graduates and things like that. Like, they were mostly like research roles, which were not really that well suited for somebody like me who did not have a strong research. What I did was I tried to make sure that I had the theoretical knowledge. And in my role in my company, whenever there was an opportunity to contribute or to be a part of a data science initiative, I was the first to volunteer. I made sure to upscale wherever required, even if it was like for a small specific project, so that I could make a case to my manager that, hey, I did this program, which is like very relevant to what we are trying to do here. And that's why I think I would be a great fit on this project or something like that. And that worked out really well.
Now you also studied abroad, which is a dream of many years. So, Abhineet, what was your experience like at the University of Florida, and how did it shapes your career compared to staying in India?
Honestly, I really had a great experience. University of Florida has a lot of great professors, including Sartaj Sahani, who fundamental guy in data structures. He wrote many books that every computer engineer has to study in their second year. And being able to take a course under him was like a dream come true. Beyond that, also, the courses were very well structured. I think I learned more in my first 6 months here at my master's program than I did in my entire undergrad. Just because you cannot really slack off, there is a constant demand. The assignments are structured in a way that they build on top of each other. So even if you make a small mistake in the first assignment, it can come back to haunt you in a way at the end of the semester. So you have to you have to continue putting in effort throughout the entire semester. And I really enjoyed the format as well. So yeah, I think it did play a major role in my growth. I don't know what would have happened if I stayed back in India, but what I really enjoyed was the fact that because I came directly after my undergrad, I was in that mindset of like being ready to study a lot. Whereas if I was working, I probably wouldn't have been able to put in as much effort, maybe because I might have been used to a certain different lifestyle.
And that's really insightful, Abhineet. It gives a good perspective on that big decision. Looking at your whole career so far, looking back, what was the biggest turning point in your career?
Biggest turning point, I think, was just choosing my undergrad to be computer engineering instead of a software oriented one, just because that gives me a lot more insight into whenever I want to do any sort of like data science any ML related optimizations, I have a little bit of idea at least of what the hardware looks like, what is going on in the hardware, what are some optimizations that I might need to make just to make sure that I don't accidentally, run into like computational inefficiencies with the hardware. I feel like it has given me a different perspective on things rather than just having a software oriented outlook, which has helped me a lot in like setting myself apart in a way compared to somebody who just has a purely software engineering background. And then secondly, I think pursuing small certification programs at different points in my career, it has just helped me be on top of technologies that are coming out, be able to pick out what might be very relevant for me, be able to kind of like filter out essentially what is going to be the next big technology or not, and then just be able to talk about something beyond my work, right? A lot of times what happens is people I meet, they're all about, oh, I'm doing this in my work, I'm doing that in my work. Employers often want to see what you're doing besides of your work, right? Work is just a part of you, right? You have to do that. There's no excuse. But what do you do beyond that? How do you stay up to date? And I think doing these small certification programs has really helped me in, again, setting myself apart because not a lot of people put that much emphasis on that. But then because I targeted these very small and very specific things, like, just doing like something related to AWS because I had a lot of experience with AWS. These things do add up over time. And they do set you apart from somebody who has maybe similar experience but doesn't have that extra certification or something like that.
So, Abhineet, once you finished your studies abroad, getting the first big job must have been a key step. So, what was your strategy to land your first major job in the United States?
My main approach was just applying online wherever I could. Wherever I thought that I was relevant, there was a relevant position, I made sure to kind of like reach out to the key people. If you go on LinkedIn, whenever you try to apply to roles, there is like always additional details. Oftentimes, if you scroll down, you will see like that who the job was posted by, who the hiring team is, details essentially about the company, messaging somebody and trying to find a common ground with them would be very helpful, especially, trying to reach out to people and just trying to detail your experiences, trying to just express your interest and be a little bit specific as to why you're interested in that specific role and that specific company. Don't just do like a generic message because everybody gets hundreds of those daily. So if you do that, those kinds of things, it will be very helpful. And then finally, just make sure that you're not applying with like the same resume everywhere. You need to tailor your resume to the job that is being posted. If you don't want to do that, you're just not going to be able to crack the barriers that exist in terms of like the ATS and all of those resume tracking services in a way. So yeah, just make sure that you're not just blindly applying everywhere and then sitting and waiting or feeling dejected that you aren't receiving any calls or anything like that. Just make sure that you're putting in that extra effort to modify your resume, reach out to people, express your interest, maybe try to grab coffee with somebody if possible. If you are visiting a city and you know that there's like a company that you're interested in, there's like somebody there is like a key decision maker, try to meet them, just message them that, hey, I'm I'm a student at this university, this is what I've done, this is why I'm interested in your company, I would love to grab a coffee and just chat with you for about 15 minutes or something like that, just to learn more about your company, learn more about your day to day, and that will definitely help.
Yeah, and even though I saw on internet and some of the Reddit posts, there is not like Indian culture type campus hiring, right, in US universities.
Exactly. Yeah. There isn't, nobody's going to come and be like, oh, here is a job for you. You have to go out and look for things. Now, there are a lot of resources available at the university level as well. Every university has a career center. Be sure to take advantage of that. A lot of times they'll help you modify your resume. They'll help you, pick out like a good template for your resume, word things correctly and things of that nature. So be sure to take advantages of that. Every university has different kind of like things that they help with. So just check with your university's career center and they should be able to help you with a lot of those details.
Yeah, those are the great tips for anyone aiming for international opportunities. So now, Abhinit, let's talk about your current role. Many wonders what a day in the life of an machine learning leader look like. What does a typical workday look like for you at PMG?
So it really depends on what I'm working with or what I'm working on. generally speaking, there are two types of projects that we have to kind of like deal with. One is more of like an experimental, research oriented. Can we do this, or can we find a way to either simplify the process or, automate the process or something like that? Maybe, it's like either it be something like building a new model to help with something, or building a new model to enable some sort of like automated discovery or something like that. Or the second role that a machine learning engineer might have is productionizing something. You might have a proof of concept that was built by somebody else, maybe like a data scientist of some kind, and now you have to productionize it so that the company can roll that out as a feature and, be able to handle the scale that comes with that. Both are completely different. Both have completely different set of challenges. But personally, my current role is about 50-50. It's like generally there is obviously productionizing things as well. And then there is obviously a lot more research oriented things going on as well. The research oriented things are a little bit more open ended. There isn't like a clear structure associated with that sort of a project. There are deadlines, and what the company wants to see is incremental progress being made. Even ruling something out is progress. And oftentimes you need to be able to explain why you're ruling something out and why that is progress. Secondly, you need to set expectations correctly. So that is another part of my role. Meeting with key stakeholders, understanding what their problems are, understanding where machine learning could help, and then just identifying what costs it might involve as well. Sometimes a solution is feasible, but it's just going to cost too much. So what can we do about that maybe? And how do we lower the cost? Or is it worth it to implement like such an expensive solution? What are the benefits that are going to come from that? How does that translate in a way? So my current role involves just navigating all of these things and either productionizing things or researching on whether something is feasible or not.
Yeah, that sounds like a busy and exciting day, full of diverse tasks. So, Abhineet, for those who just entering the data science field, technical skills are a big focus. So, what are the must-have technical skills every data science freshers should focus on in 2025?
I think there is a distinction here between data scientist and machine learning engineer. There are some similar skills, but there are some skills that are, restricted to one of those roles. For example, if you're trying to become a data scientist, Python is important. Understanding all of those libraries, NumPy, scikit-learn, all of SciPy, all of those libraries are pretty important. But then I would say statistics is also pretty important. If you're trying to be like a machine learning engineer, statistics maybe not so much. Understanding of cloud services, understanding basics of application development are a lot more important. So depending on what your goal is, do you want to go into research and building models essentially, or do you want to go into productionizing models? You need to have that distinction of like, if you want to build proof of concept models, you need to have a solid understanding as to why a model is giving the result that it is, and what else can you do in a specific model to really solve the problem that a stakeholder might have. For example, a data scientist might need to know, why is the model giving me a good result? Why is the model giving me a bad result? What are some of the things that the model is looking at? Then they might need to meet with a stakeholder and identify whether those are the same things that they used to look at when making a decision. If not, then they might need to go back and look into the model and see why the model is prioritizing certain features over certain other features. A machine learning engineer might not need to dive that deep into the why the model is making certain decision. What they might need to dive into is productionizing it. How does this model scale? How do I lower the latency of that? Because obviously a user can't just sit there and wait all day. How do I help the user understand the key decisions from the model? So a data scientist might have like a very statistical looking dashboard. How do I convert that into something that the user can quickly understand and explain to somebody or something like that? So I think if you're trying to be like data scientist, you definitely need to have a good understanding about statistics and all of the different metrics. A lot of current new grads, what they know is a bunch of coding. But if you ask them basic questions about, sure, you can build a transformer, sure, you can build an LLM, but why are you building an LLM? What is the goal? Why can't I use a simple model? What is the advantage over a simple model? What are some of the basic metrics that the LLM gives me? Or, if you're talking about like a decision tree, what are some of the main things that the decision tree considered when building the model. What is entropy? What is information gain? Like all of these things are very important. The theory becomes very important if you're trying to be a data scientist. And if you're trying to become a machine learning engineer, cloud services is extremely important. You should know the basics of at least one cloud service. Pick anyone you want. The skills are transferable pretty easily, and nobody's looking for like a specific thing, right? If you have experience with AWS, that works with GCP. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I'm looking only for somebody with an experience with GCP, something like that. You need to know the basics of application development. How do I ensure security in my ML models? How do I ensure security of the data while it's being transmitted from the user to the model? How do I get the predictions to the UI in whatever format they are required? Things like that. You can treat the model as in a black box in a way where you're not really doing anything with the model. You are building services around that model.
Yeah, those are clear and actionable skills for our listeners to focus on. So, Abhineet, speaking of skills, sometimes the simple things are best. From your vast experience of machine learning, what's the one ML algorithm you think is underrated but effective? Do you think so? Any?
Yeah, definitely. Decision trees and random forests. You can solve about 50 to 80% of your problems by using that model. It is an extremely old model, came out in like 1990s. It still performs really well, and it is very easy to interpret. Go into the model and explain why the model is making a certain prediction very easily. It makes sense to a non-technical user very quickly. It's very easy to plot as well if they need to see. It's just essentially finding a bunch of thresholds and following down that path. So one of the most important things to identify is, can I solve this problem using a simple model? Anybody can use a library and use Hugging Face and build like an LLM or make a call to an LLM and be like, here is the result. I don't want that. If I wanted that, I could have an LLM write the code for that. So I think it's extremely important that people realize that, and people try to identify what is the thing that we are trying to achieve and select the appropriate model accordingly. Random forest, even XGBoost, kind of like similar, but those two models can solve 90% of the problems that you might run into.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's good to know about the hidden gems. So, Abhineet, now in the big companies, choosing the right cloud platform is a key. How do you decide between using AWS or Azure for your machine learning projects?
Honestly, the truth is that it's decided for you. You don't get a lot of choice in a way, because any big company that you go into will have an existing architecture set up on some cloud service provider. You just have to work with that. If luckily you are given the choice of being able to choose, I think it's important that you decide what am I trying to do. For example, if you're trying to work with a lot of services that are specific to one provider, you need to be aware of that. If your data is resting in AWS, you really don't want to use GCP, even though it might be better for that purpose. It's just communicating between the two is going to take a lot of time. Instead, you might want to just rely on AWS. If a company has good relationships with one cloud service provider, you again don't get a choice of using a second different one, just because the company will not have that same relationship, that same trust in that other platform. And managing two different set of cloud architectures becomes very messy very quickly. You might think that, oh, it's just one small project that I want to do here. It'll quickly evolve into like a big thing, because there are tons of security updates that keep coming in, tons of like IAM things that you need to consider, and all of that will become a big hassle very quickly. So ideally, if you ask me, GCP is a better platform for doing ML oriented things, at least in my observations. But the breadth of services that AWS offers is unparalleled. AWS pretty much has something for anything that you want to do. So there is that as well. But ultimately, the answer is that the decision will be made for you. No matter what you want to do, you might be able to make like the API calls to get like use one service from a different cloud provider, but even that is going to be pretty on a very case by case basis.
Yeah, that's give a good idea of how to pick the right tool. So, Abhineet, beyond just making model works, making them fair is also very important these days. How do you make sure your model are not only accurate but also ethically and fair?
Okay, so that's a great question. Now, again, it's like there are a bunch of different things you want to focus on here at different steps in the entire journey. The first starts with data cleaning. You need to ensure that any features that might have any sort of that introduce any sort of bias are removed from the data or are masked. No PII information should at any point come into contact with the model that should be stored completely separately. Secondly, any sort of like demographic information, you need to consider that very thoroughly before using that. Is there an alternative to use this? Or do I need to use this? How do I ensure that my model is considering things fairly, things like that. The final part is geographic information as well. You need to clearly understand that there are limitations of every single ML model. And if the data going in is not accounting for that in a way, you are going to see biased results coming out. And then you need to use explainability tools like SHAP or SageMaker Clarify or something like that, which will help you explain your outputs. If you follow all of these steps, you should be able to get an unbiased model, at least in theory. Obviously, you still need to perform a whole bunch of testing or to ensure that you're considering the edge cases. But generally speaking, if you are careful with the demographic and the PI information, you should be in a good position to ensure that your model is fair and can perform the task that it's set out. Ideally, if it's something that involves like a huge amount of impact in a way, let's say, you might want to ensure that any model that you're using is a secondary tool and the decision is in a way corroborated by a human, and you're not replacing the human decision process entirely with a machine learning model. And then you might want to just keep an eye out on your model metrics across all of the groups that you have. If you see any sort of like weird performances at any point, you might need to address that. Go back and ensure that things are working the way that you intended them to work. Use a tool like MLflow or something like that to keep a track of like your data. Ensure that if your data is changing over time, you're retraining your model accordingly.
That's a crucial point. It's about building trust in artificial intelligence. So, Abhineet, you have trained a lot of data scientists of 150. That's a huge number. So, my question is that you have trained over 150 plus data scientists. What is the most common mindset gap you see in the early career professions?
It really depends on what you are trying to achieve in a way, or what the industry is that you're speaking to. For example, if I'm talking to somebody from the computer science industry, they think that machine learning is all about I can build a model and pretty much do anything. In other industries, there is a bit of a skepticism that how would a machine learning model be able to understand the nuances, or how would it be able to like there is skepticism and trust in the ML models essentially. But these days, what I've seen is everybody is just like, I can use an LLM to do that. So there is a broad range of things that I've seen in a way. But one of the most common ones is the thought is that building a model is very simple and that I don't need to know anything about anything. I can just import Python libraries and build a model with like 15 lines of code and I'm done. Building models is 90% of the job is like, or 80% of the job is just cleaning the data. And secondly, the building the model part is easy. I agree with that. But the hard part is choosing which model and how do I explain or how do I build trust in my model with the stakeholder. Because if you are working with non-technical stakeholders, they will not have a clear idea of why the model is giving a certain result. And you will need some sort of a tool to get them to trust the model outputs. Essentially, especially if you're using, complex model, it becomes very hard to be able to explain the results. And a stakeholder can't trust the results or doesn't know where the results came from, they are very likely to just ignore it and keep doing things by hand. I've had that happen numerous times where, we built a model to simplify a process, but then the stakeholders did not trust the results enough to use that model to replace whatever manual process that they were doing. So I think it's extremely important that any early career professional considers this. You do not want to build a complex model to solve a simple problem. And secondly, building models is not the only thing you do in data science or in machine learning. There are a ton of things that go in before and after you build a model. Building a model is essentially the simplest thing that you will do.
Yeah, because the students are mostly focusing on the building the model, but they don't know they ignore the process of the maintaining model also afterwards.
Yeah.
That is a main point.
That's true. A lot of these early career professionals look at some YouTube tutorials that just say, okay, you know what, let's just build like this neural network that does this thing. They're like, I'll just build a neural network. Okay, sure, you'll build a neural network, but how do you get people to use it? Why? How do you get people to trust the results that it gives? How do you clean the data that goes into it? how do you ensure that the model is ethical and fair? So there are a bunch of different things that go along with that. And then the second thing is you need to ensure that you're keeping up with user demand in a way. You don't want to build a model and then have a user be like, oh, the model takes longer than I can do the thing manually or something like that. So these are important things that a user needs to consider. And early career professionals oftentimes just think that building the most complex model with just a few lines of code is something that is what data science is all about.
Yeah, that's a very valuable feedback for our early career listeners. So, Abhineet, the world of machine learning is always changing with the new tools coming out all the times. How do you keep up with these fast changing tools, libraries, and frameworks in machine learning? How do you keep update yourself?
So there are a bunch of different podcasts like yours, that users should definitely listen to and use. Beyond that, there are obviously newsletters out there that do a good job of condensing all of that information. And then finally, try to attend any sort of like conferences wherever possible. Nearly every single conference these days is available for free virtually. Make a point to at least attend the big ones, the Google conference, maybe the NVIDIA conference or something like that. They announce a lot of good things and whenever they announce new things, there are always GitHub repos with it that have essentially demos on how to do a certain thing. Now, you might not be able to run the code just due to the complexity of it and the costs involved, but you can for sure at least look through the code and understand why are they making certain decisions, what are architectures looking like, and what do things look like when you want to implement an industry grade solution. That's the important note here, industry grade solution. Anybody can build like a random forest model at home. Again, I don't expect an early career professional or even a student to have access to the same resources. So, even if you can't get that sort of like complexity and get that sort of like infrastructure support to build whatever you want, even if you look at those repos that some organization puts out as tutorials or as getting started, they consider all of these things. They consider the infrastructure complexity. They consider the scalability and all of these things when designing these examples. So just looking at that will help you get started with like best design practices, best coding practices, and it will help you get ready in a way for that first big opportunity that you will have to design an enterprise grade solution.
Yeah, that's a smart approach. It's tough to keep up, but you have to. So, Abhineet, let's talk about the education here in India. From your experience or your point of view, what's missing in most of college curriculums in India that industry expects? Do you have any knowledge about this?
Sure. I mean, my knowledge is probably 6, 7 years old at this point. So I don't know how much things have changed. I haven't really kept up with the curriculums and things of that nature. But at least what I found was things were a lot more theoretical. My specific University of Pune, had a very, very theoretical curriculum. Practical things were not really considered. If they were considered, it was like just some outdated technology that we were using or something that wasn't really being used outside anymore. Industry had moved on from whatever we were doing in our labs a while back. But the good thing was that knowing these not necessarily antiquated, but knowing these olden things prepared me in a way for the newer technologies that other people weren't, right? Because it's like the newer technologies always build on the older technologies. And the problem that a lot of other new grads faced was that they did not understand what the older technology was. Given that I understood the older technology, picking up the newer technology was actually easier and it actually made a lot more sense in a way, if that makes sense. If once you go through C++, understanding Java and Python is very easy. And it feels like, why wasn't I doing this my entire life? But at the same time, you now have the advantage of understanding a language that very few people do. And any new library that you come across in Python was probably written originally in C++ or maybe Java. But because now you understand that language at least a little bit, you have an insight into how that library actually works, how to make the best decisions, how to optimize for speed, things of that nature. So I think at the start, it felt like my university was just teaching me like some antiquated things. Now I've come to appreciate it because it helps me understand new technologies much easier and make these design choices that other people will not be able to make in a way just because they don't have that same insight into the thing that the library was written in, essentially. So I think it's a dual-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword, definitely. But I think you just need to be reading these engineering blogs that many companies put out. That should give you watch any TED talks that are going on, or any just talks, attend conferences, and that should give you an idea of how the industry is using a certain technology that you might be studying theoretically. Studying it theoretically does have its advantages. There is no doubt about that, but you do need some practical application, some practical knowledge to understand how this is actually applied, because oftentimes there is a little bit of a disconnect between the academia and the industry's usage of a certain thing.
So, Abhineet, you have also trained professionals at big names like HSBC and Deloitte. So my question is that you have trained professionals at the places like HSBC and Deloitte. What's one impactful project an Indian student can build to stand out or to get placed in this type of companies?
That's a good question, actually. I guess I wasn't part of like the hiring process at these companies. I was just like training
Correct.
their hires in a way. So I don't really know what you can do to get placed there. But from what I saw, these people were not really, extraordinary. Like it's not difficult for a new grad to get placed at these companies. It's not like they did some crazy amount of research. They had like 50 research papers published. They had, 50 different projects done. What they did was they found what they like and they applied machine learning to that. Again, if you try to build a general model that everyone is building, that's not really going to help you get placed. Because again, as I mentioned, there are a lot of things that go on before and after the machine learning model itself. And these people identified these things and were able to focus on them and able to present information in a way that made sense, that made a hiring manager go, okay, you know what? This person knows what goes on around the machine learning model as well. And that's why I need to hire. So what I mean by that is you don't have to just build a model. You have to present the information in a way that a user can understand it, a user can grasp it, and a user can understand the level of work that you might have put into that model. Sure, you might have done a lot of feature engineering, you might have done like a lot of different techniques to supervise the model or to, track the performance of the model. But unless you have like great visualizations, unless you have great readmes that explain these things, nobody's going to understand the level of work you put into it. So these folks that I was working with were really good at that, at translating the effort that they put into human readable terms in a way. Obviously, the effort is there. They all worked really hard. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I think what set them apart was that they weren't just focusing on the model. They were focusing on all of the different aspects of the machine learning pipeline, right from, how were they doing data engineering to building dashboards to display the results in a way that made hiring manager go, this person really knows the entire pipeline. I'm not just hiring like somebody who to build a model because there are 50 other people who could do that, but rather I'm hiring somebody who can work on any part of that pipeline and still understand what goes on in the other part. So let's say for tomorrow, I need this person to work on a different aspect of things. They can. If tomorrow I need them to present something to somebody, they can. So they were essentially like multifaceted in a way, whereas I think a lot of people just focus on like, just want to build models, right? And that's where I think the difference comes in.
And that's a fantastic idea. So, Abhineet, it sounds like something that would definitely get attention. So, my question is that many Indian students dream of studying or working abroad. What's your advice to them?
I guess my advice is just, continue working towards your goals, make sure you understand what your goal is, what are you required to get there, and just continue making incremental progress towards it. For me, it was a journey of 2 years to right from, deciding that I wanted to pursue my master's to finally coming here to starting the program. So it is a journey. You just need to identify your goal. You need to get all of the information that you can and continue working towards it. It's a journey. You make incremental progress every single day, and you kind of continue from.
Yeah, and another thing is the common question among those planning to go abroad is about higher education. So, how important is master's degree for getting a job abroad?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say that it's like needed, but at the same time, it helps you set yourself apart. A master's degree is essentially a way to gain an insight into what does this field look like when I need to work in it for, let's say, you get to learn from people who have worked in the field for a long, long time. So it's an additional insight into what the field looks like right now. What are some of the main things that are going on right now? And yeah, it's just like a way to gain more insight, build your network, and continue from there. I wouldn't say it's like needed, but it does help.
That helps clarify things for many. But Abhineet, what if someone can't afford a master's degree abroad? What's the next best alternative for them?
Honestly, I think you need to have a clear goal in mind that if you want to be a machine learning engineer at a certain company, start researching that company, start researching the technologies they use, start researching what are the problems that the company is trying to solve, and start working towards that one by one, right? So let's say that that company uses AWS heavily, maybe get a certification in AWS. If you understand that, okay, that company is working on building recommendation systems, try to do like a small course from any one of those many providers on recommendation systems. And that's kind of like how you build your skill set to make it appealing to a certain company. You don't really need a master's degree for that. What you need is a strategic plan, and you need to divide that plan into like smaller steps and identify the key technologies or key pieces in that plan, and just kind of like work towards getting all of those pieces in place in a way, which will make you a great candidate for a role at that company. And you can kind of like go from there.
Yeah, those are good practical alternatives. Also, Abhineet, a big question for many beginners is about getting into the machine learning. Can freshers break into the machine learning roles, or is experience a must in United States companies?
I mean, I got into it as a fresher, so but the industry has changed a lot. I honestly don't know if you need like again, I haven't been part of a recruiting process in a while, so I don't know if you need experience for new grad roles. But if you have the right credentials, it shouldn't be hard. Again, by that what I mean is you just need to have the skill set that is appealing to a company, right? So just a master's degree probably won't do that in certain situations, just because you might be competing with people who have worked in the industry for a while. So you might need to, go out and get a certification in a specific technology. For example, cloud services. Again, if you're trying to break into like a company here, they are heavily using cloud services, and a master's degree won't really have anything too much about cloud services. So getting like a certification in one of the technologies would be really great. Being able to go to hackathons and just work on cross-functional teams that have software developers, that have like machine learning engineers, data scientists, all of these working together would really help you, because again, that's another way to get experience of what happens in an actual company where a data scientist or a machine learning engineer is not just siloed and working alone. They're oftentimes working as part of a cross-functional team that has software developers, that has UX people. There are essentially a whole bunch of different people involved in any sort of like project that comes out. And then finally, the thing to note is, as I mentioned, it's not just about building models, it's about what goes on before and after as well. So how do you present your information? How do you convince a stakeholder that this model is making decisions the way you would expect it to, or at least be able to explain the decisions of a model? All of these things would really help anybody trying to break into the industry.
That's so very good to hear for freshers. It's all about how you present yourself also. Yeah. So Abhineet, when hiring in US, what really helps a candidate to stand out? What careers more weightage when hiring in the US, like cloud certification like AWS or Azure, Kaggle ranking, or something else, or apart from this, anything?
It just comes down to the role that you're applying to. If it's a research role, prior research experience will probably be weighed the most. If it's like a role in a company that scales a lot, any one of those FANG companies or Netflix or something like that, where a feature will be used by millions of users, that's where cloud certifications will help a lot. If it's like a role in a company that is under heavy scrutiny, again, financial services or something like that, where you have to follow like a lot of regulations, having knowledge about ways to do that or ways to explain your results, ways to make sure that your model is ethical and fair would be really helpful. So you really need to have a target industry in mind before starting to build your profile towards what that industry really prioritizes or really needs to have in a way. For example, cloud services is one that is more general. Most companies do require cloud services, but then healthcare has a completely separate set of challenges than something like possibly like a Facebook, for example, right? So you just really need to be understanding what does the work look like in different industries, what are machine learning engineers working on, and decide what really works for you or what really you find exciting about those challenges. Once you have figured that out, once you have figured out your industry, you can start building a profile that makes you an attractive candidate for that specific industry.
Also, Abhineet, many Indian engineering often find themselves in service companies because in India there are more of the service-based companies. They provide the service to US clients. So my question is that many Indian engineers feel stuck in service-based companies. How can they shift to product-based ML roles if they are working in service-based companies?
I have always worked in product based companies, so my experience might be a little one sided here. But from what I have understand from speaking to people and just talking to my network is generally what helped them was trying to work on projects that involved the full life cycle of ML projects or of ML models essentially. If you get too siloed in on one technology, that might not be a great fit for a product based company just because they're not looking for somebody who's really an expert at one thing because their product needs shift dynamically. And that means that they are going to be switching up things very quickly. They want somebody who can quickly iterate. Another thing that might be helpful is to do certifications on the side whenever you can to kind of like broaden your experience a little bit. If you're just kind of like doing data engineering for a while, it might get a little bit challenging to switch into like a product based company where a data engineer might be expected to do five other things as well. So that might help, doing certifications in something like building ML models and interpreting ML models, maintaining ML models or something like that. Definitely very helpful. And finally, again, just keeping up to date with the industry trends beyond your role. Just because you're a data engineer doesn't mean you shouldn't know what goes on in an ML model, or doesn't mean you shouldn't know what post processing looks like in ML. So I think if you do a combination of these things over a period of time, you develop that necessary skill set that makes you an attractive candidate to product based company, and you can kind of like go from there.
Yeah, those are valuable steps to make that shift. And on the topic of jobs, salaries are often a point of discussion, Abhinit. So that the one question is also came that Indian salaries in data science are often lower than the global standards. How can professionals negotiate better?
Again, it just comes down to what you offer to a company. If you have like a certain parallel skill that you think makes you a valuable candidate, the company will be willing to pay you a little bit more. If you have like, let's say, a certification that sets you apart, that again, the company is going to be willing to pay you a little bit better. If you nail all of the interviews, obviously the company is willing to pay you a little bit better. It just comes down to how attractive a candidate you become to a company. There is going to be some difference just based on the economics of things, but that doesn't mean that the salaries are not great. There are companies that offer great salaries. You just need to make yourself an exciting candidate for those companies and try to maybe look for a role in those companies. And again, how to go about that is what we discussed earlier. Find the company you like that you think pays amazingly, find what they're working on, try to build a profile that makes you an attractive candidate to that company by doing all of that. Now maybe get a certification in like maintaining ML models or something like that the company might be working on. Maybe get a nano degree from Udacity about maybe deep learning or natural language processing or whatever the company might be doing, recommendation systems. Do a project about that. Try to connect with people and understand what their day to day looks like, and maybe build something that works or that is parallel to that, essentially. All of these things will make you a good candidate for that specific company. And if you're able to nail those interviews, you should be in a great position to get a very nice company job.
That's a very helpful advice. Abhinit, looking into the future, what your take on the future of data science in India versus United States over the next 5 years?
That's a good question. I feel like again, it's both countries are going fast towards LLMs and those kind of things at a very exceptional pace. Knowing these technologies is going to be key for any data scientist. Knowing how to use them, knowing how to understand what their advantages are, understand what their drawbacks are, and understand where do you fit into the ecosystem of these LLMs is going to be key. Just keep in mind that ideas cannot be something that an LLM generates itself. There are going to be ways that a data scientist offers a lot more than an LLM, essentially. What I mean by that is, sure, an LLM can code, but it cannot offer that architectural things. It cannot really understand the nuances of the product that you might be building. That's where you have to build yourself. And that's where you set yourself apart by knowing what exactly is your company's product, and just having a good idea of who your stakeholders are and what do they need, and B, trying to make sure that your stakeholders can trust the decisions that an ML model is putting in front of them. How that's something that you have to figure out. So those are kind of like going to be the main challenges that data scientists in both the countries are going to be working on. And just keep on making sure that you're up to date in terms of the technologies, up to date in terms of like the new things coming out, and you should be in a great position.
That's a thoughtful outlook on where things are headed. Finally, Abhineet, for every India student listening right now who dream to career in data, what's your message to every Indian students dreaming for a career in data?
I guess my main message to them would be keep on working, keep on doing what you're doing. Make sure that you're continuing to work on upskilling yourself and building challenging projects. Keep up to date with all of the different technologies. There are so many different ways that you have to stay up to date. It's not just about getting a newsletter. It's not just about reading a research paper. It's about having a holistic view of things. It's about trying to understand what is this new technology and how can it be used in the field that you are trying to major in, or just having an understanding of like, okay, you know what, there is this technology out there that could be applied to this field. Nobody expects you to, as a new grad, be coming up with new things. Nobody expects you to build a new LLM. What people do expect is how will you apply something that you know from one field to the company that you're going to work. So the more insight that you can get into any company that you are interviewing with, or any company that you are going to be aiming to work for, the better it will be. Try to build a holistic profile. Don't just restrict yourself to, I just want to build models. There are a ton of things that go on around ML. So familiarize yourself with all of those things. Maybe build a project in one of those things if you can. Being close to building models is also great. And you can make the jump over to building models or doing the thing that you want to do pretty easily if you are already in a position where you've shown yourself or you've proven yourself in that data engineering role, or maybe in that software engineering role already. So anybody.
Yeah, Abhineet, such a powerful and inspiring message to end on. Your insights today, from your amazing journey to your practical advice on careers and the future of artificial intelligence, have been incredibly valuable for our listeners. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much, Abhineet.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you like this podcast. Please let me know in the comment which guests you would like to see on the podcast and any specific topics you would like us to discuss with them. I will try to bring those guests and ask your questions, so you will get more helpful information. Before you go, share this episode with someone. It might really help, because one conversation can change person's life and give them idea and new direction. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. See you in next video.